Hi everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to crochet this darling elf doll. So the pattern calls for DK weight yarn and it takes approximately 11 grams in nude, 6 grams in green, 11 grams in red, 3 grams in white, 1.5 grams in light brown, 3.5 grams in light yellow. And you're also going to need a 3mm crochet hook and 7mm safety eyes, in addition to your normal crochet items like yarn needles, stitch markers, embroidery floss, and stuffing. However, the gauge doesn't matter much. You can use any size yarn and matching hook size as long as you adjust the yardage of yarn accordingly. If you're using a larger weight yarn and larger hook size, you'll end up using a bit more yarn. So for today's video, I'm going to be using a 4mm crochet hook, 9mm safety eyes, and worsted weight yarn. If you haven't already, be sure to snag the matching greeting card to make an adorable and one-of-a-kind gift that your friends and family will love. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so we're getting started on the head and we're going to be using this nude colored yarn, and the first thing that we need to do is get a magic ring formed. So let's do a quick review on how to tie a magic ring and then how to make our first few single crochet stitches inside. Alright, so let's review how to form a magic ring. So we're going to start by taking a little length of our yarn, and I'm using white for this demonstration. Make sure you're using the correct color for the pattern that you are following along with. So I'm going to take this white and I'm going to reserve myself a little bit of a tail. So I'm going to take the end of that yarn and I'm going to stretch it so I've got about 5 inches or so of a tail. And the tail is going to be the end that is not attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got about 5 inches or so reserved of that tail, we're going to take our yarn hand. For me, that's my left hand, but if you're a left-handed crocheter, this might be your right hand. But we're going to take our yarn hand and make a bit of a finger guns here. So my index and my middle finger, I'm going to put them together, and I'm going to be looking at the inside of them. Then I'm going to take that tail that I've reserved, that 5 inches, and I'm going to lay it so that it's over the lower digit on my index and my middle. And then I'll take my thumb and I'm going to press the yarn to those 2 fingers. Then I'm going to take my hook hand, which is for me my right hand, but could be your left hand, and I'm going to grab the working yarn. Once I've got that grabbed, I'll take it and I'm going to wrap it around the back side of my index and my middle finger so that it's sort of close to that top digit. I'll flip my hand over so you can see. So I want it to be close to my top digit, so you can see it's closer to the 2 tops of my fingers here. So we're going to wrap that around, and then once we've got it around the top digit of those 2 fingers, we're going to bring it so that it goes behind our thumb again. So I use my thumb and I pinch that second wrap in place. Then we're going to keep wrapping, this time going around the lower digit on our 2 fingers. So I'll flip my hand over so you can see these 2 wraps here. This is that one I just made, going around that lower digit. So we'll wrap around that lower digit, and then we're going to take our working yarn and one more time snug it behind our thumb, and then just pull it out of our way. So once we've done that, we should have 2 wraps and this sort of X shape on the insides of our hands. So once we have all of the yarn wrapped around our yarn hand here, we're ready to take our crochet hook in our hook hand, and we're going to flip our yarn hand over so that we're looking at the back side of our fingers. So we should have 2 wraps, one around the top digit, one around the lower digit on our yarn hand. We're going to take our hook and slip it underneath that top wrap, and then use the hook part to snag that lower wrap and bring it underneath the top wrap. Then we're going to take both of our hands and we're going to flip them over so that we're looking at the inside and away from our body. So I'm flipping out and away from my body. And then I'm going to bring my 2 hands together, so my yarn hand and my hook hand. I'm going to bring them so the index finger here on my hook hand can touch the back side of my yarn hand. Then using the thumb and index finger of my hook hand, I'm going to grab both the wrap on my hook and the wrap still on my fingers right where they meet. So I'm going to kind of snag the 2 of them together right there. Once I've got those pinched between my thumb and index finger on my hook hand, I can let go with my thumb and then gently slide those wraps off of my index and middle finger. So now that I've done that, let's locate both the tail, that's the end that's no longer attached to our ball of yarn, so it's got this blunt cut end on it. And we're going to kind of pull that over into the 12 o'clock position, so kind of up and away. And then let's locate the working yarn. That's the stuff still attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got those two identified, we're going to take the working yarn and begin tensioning it. So to do that, we'll take our index finger on our yarn hand. That for me is my left hand. Could be your right hand for you if you're a left-handed crocheter. And we're going to slip the working yarn over the top of our index finger. Then we'll take our middle, ring, and pinky finger on our yarn hand, and we're going to wrap those around that working yarn. Once you've done that, we also need to sandwich this working yarn in between our magic ring and our tail. So to do that, I like to take my middle finger and thumb on my yarn hand, and I'm going to grab that tail with my middle finger here. And then with my thumb, I want to grab the ring. So we don't want to grab our working yarn, which is kind of going in through that ring. We want to just get the bottom end of the ring here. And once you've got those two, we're going to kind of pinch them together. And you can see that sandwiches our working yarn in between the two of them. Once we've got those grabbed with our yarn hand, we can let go with our index and thumb on our hook hand. And the ring here that's on our hook is really loose. We'll tighten that by pulling our index finger up and away. You can see how that tightens that yarn. And then once we've done that, we're ready to yarn over and draw through the loop on our hook. So we'll take our hook, put the yarn over our hook, so I kind of just swing around the back side there and grab it. And we're going to pull that working yarn directly through the loop on our hook. Once we've done that, you can let go. It's not going to come undone. It won't come untied, which is very comforting because we've spent all this time creating it. The last thing we need to do before we're ready to begin is we're going to take the tail, and you can see it's threaded through our magic ring. We're going to take that tail and we're going to pull it out from the center of that ring. And from here, we're ready to begin working in the magic ring. We also need to work over the tail as well. So we'll take that ring and we'll take the tail and we're going to set them together so that we are working over both of these strands, the ring and the tail. All right, you are ready to go ahead and continue on in your pattern. Alright, so now that we have our magic ring formed, we're ready to start in on round 1. And the first thing that we need to do for round 1 is put 8 single crochet stitches inside of our magic ring. So to do that, we're going to be working in the ring and over the tail that we use to tie the ring. So I like to hold the two of them together with my yarn hand here. You see I've got them pinched between my middle finger and my thumb. And then to make our first single crochet stitch, we're going to take our hook hand and using the index finger on our hook hand, hold that loop in place as we take our hook and push it from front to back through the ring and underneath the tail as well. Then we're going to yarn under. So I sort of flip my hook over the yarn and snag it, and then use my hook to draw our working yarn up into a nice tall loop through the magic ring onto our hook. Then to finish off this single crochet stitch, we're going to yarn over. So I'm putting the yarn on top of my hook under my yarn, and then use my hook to draw through those two loops on my hook. So you can see that forms our first single crochet stitch, this little V shape here. We also want to mark that stitch with our stitch marker. So we'll take the end of our marker and push it underneath both sides, the front and the back loop of that first single crochet stitch, and lock it in place. So that's the first single crochet stitch. Round 1 says we need to do 8 of those total, so we're going to make them all in the same way. Hold on to the loop, go through the magic ring, yarn under and draw up a loop, then yarn over and draw through both, So there's our second single crochet stitch. Alright, so I've made all 8 of my single crochet stitches, and I can double check the amount of stitches that I have by flipping my work over and counting these little V shapes, starting with the one that's marked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we don't count this loop here on our hook as a stitch. It's sort of like a stitch in the works. Once we've got all 8 single crochet stitches, we can pull the tail of our magic ring by holding onto that last stitch and then just tugging. And that closes off round 1 and puts our last stitch right by our first stitch, which is great because our next stitch in round 2 needs to go in that first stitch. Speaking of round 2, let's go ahead and get started by taking our stitch marker out of the first stitch from round 1. And round 2 we need to increase in each stitch all the way around. So to do that, we're going to be putting 2 single crochet stitches in each one of the stitches from round 1. So to make the first half of our increase, our first single crochet stitch, we're going to take our hook and push it through front to back underneath the front and the back loop of that single crochet stitch we made from last round. Then make our single crochet stitch just like we did, yarning under and drawing a loop up through the fabric of our work this time and not through the ring. And then yarning over and drawing through 2 more loops to finish off that stitch. We also want to mark this stitch here that we've just created. That's the first stitch of the round, and we always want to mark the first stitch of the round. And then to finish up our increase, we need to go back through that same space right here from round 1 and make a second single crochet stitch. So I'm going to go back through that same space and make my second single crochet stitch. Alright, so there's my first increase. Then I'm going to rotate around here and go through my next single crochet stitch, the second one from round 1. Make another increase. I'm just going to keep increasing in every stitch until I am all the way around, and I'll have 16 stitches total at the end of my round. Alright, I'm all the way around round 2. Before I move on to round 3, you can see our magic ring sort of opened up a little bit. I'm going to pull the magic ring tail really tightly one last time. You can see that closes off the center of the magic ring. And I'm going to give this tail a trim. I'm not going to cut it all the way off, I'm going to just trim it short. It's going to hide out on the inside of our work, and then this tail will stay out of our way now that we've trimmed it. Alright, we're ready for round 3. In round 3 we've got another parentheses. We've got the ones at the end of our instruction telling us how many stitches we need to have at the end of the round. But then we have some here at the very beginning. So we need to make everything that's inside of those parentheses in the order they're in them, the amount of times indicated outside. So that translates to 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round, increase, and then repeat 1 single crochet stitch, increase. And we'll do that 8 times total. So let's dive right in. We'll take our marker out, make 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round, remark that stitch, then 1 increase in the next stitch, then repeat that. This is our second repeat, 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase. Repeat that. Here's our third repeat, 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase. And you can see I'm just going to keep repeating that until I've done it 8 times total, and I'm all the way around this round. Alright, that's round 3 done for me. So rounds 4 and 5, all we need to do is put one single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. So here I am starting in on round 4. I'll take my marker out, make my first stitch of the round, and then immediately put my marker back in place. It's really important that you do this at the beginning of each new round, especially in a multi-round repeat like rounds 4 and 5. That way you can keep track of where you are in your pattern. So rounds 4 and 5, again, just one single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. I will see you back here whenever I have made that last single crochet stitch of round 5, and we're ready to move on to round 6 together. Alright, so I just finished the last single crochet stitch of round 5 and we're ready to move on to round 6 together. We've got another parentheses pattern to repeat, so we'll take our marker out and place one single crochet stitch in the first 5 stitches of the round. There are those 5 single crochet stitches, and then we're going to increase in the next stitch. And then repeat that pattern of 5 single crochet stitches, increase 3 more times for a total of 4 repetitions or 28 stitches at the end of this round. Alright, that's round 6 done. So for round 7 and 8, just like rounds 4 and 5, one single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Remembering to put our marker back in as soon as we start a new round. So here I am going in on round 7. And just like before, I will see you back here whenever I have finished all of the single crochet stitches of round 8, and we're ready to move on to round 9 together. Okay, so I just made the last single crochet stitch of round 8, and I'm ready to move on to round 9. Take our stitch marker out and then place one single crochet stitch in the first 9 stitches of our round. So there are those 9 single crochet stitches. Then in the next 4 stitches, we're going to place one increase in each. So 4 back-to-back increases. Alright, so there are those increases. Then one single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches of the round. There are those 5 single crochet stitches. Then another 4 increases back to back. Alright, so there are those increases. Then one single crochet stitch in the remaining 6 stitches of the round. Alright, so that wraps up round 9. So rounds 10 through 13, just like rounds 4 and 5 and 7 and 8, one single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around, remembering to always move our stitch marker up at the beginning of each new round. So like before, I'll see you back here whenever I have made that last single crochet stitch in the last round of this multi-round repeat, and we'll get the safety eyes placed and continue on together. Alright, so I just finished the last single crochet stitch of round 13 and I'm ready to get my safety eyes placed. So I need to take the loop on my hook and pull it away from my work to draw it long, and then take my crochet hook out and set it aside for just a moment while we work. And then we need to flip our work over, so I'm going to just turn it. And then locate those increases that we made in round 9, so those 4 back-to-back increases. That's going to be sort of where our face is centered. So it sort of flares out and makes a bell shape along those. So we're going to be centering our face in between those increases. Alright, so I'm going to be using some 9mm safety eyes. You may need to size these down or up depending on the weight of yarn that you're using. And if this elf doll is going to be for a child or a pet, you may want to opt to not use safety eyes and embroider the eyes on instead. But if you're using safety eyes, let's go ahead and get the spacing correct here. So we're going to be counting down to round 8, starting from our magic ring. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then shifting over so that the eye is sort of closest to where that first increase is over on this hand side. Then the eyes are about 3 stitches apart, so 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to put my eye in here. Actually, I need to scoot over one over, so I have space for the nose. You can, of course, adjust these just based on your own preference. If you want them to be a little higher or a little lower, that's kind of up to you. But once you're happy with their placement, you can go ahead and take the little plastic backs that come with your safety eyes and snap them on the back side of your work. And that gets them secured. And we can continue working on our crochet. So we'll flip our work back over, take our hook and put it in that loop we drew up long, and then pull on our working yarn to tighten that loop down on our hook. And we're ready for round 14. So we'll take our stitch marker out. And round 14, we're going to start with 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of our round. And remark that single crochet stitch. And then we need to make a decrease. So to make our decrease, we're going to be working in the front loops only of the next 2 stitches. So to work in just the front loop, we'll take our crochet hook, and rather than grabbing both of our loops by pushing straight through front to back, we're going to kind of slide our crochet hook up and in between from the bottom to the top of our next stitch, snagging just the front loop on our hook. Then to continue working our decrease, we're going to yarn under and draw up a loop through that front loop, and then repeat what we've just done in the next front loop. So snag the stitch front loop, yarn under and draw up a loop. So you can see I've got 2 loops coming out of those front loops. To finish our decrease, we're going to yarn over and draw through all 3 of the loops left on our crochet hook. So there's that decrease. We need to repeat the pattern 1 single crochet stitch, 1 decrease, another 11 times for a total of 12 repetitions. So let's do that one more time. In the next stitch, 1 single crochet stitch, and then another decrease. So grabbing just the front loop, yarn under and draw up a loop. Next front loop, yarn under and draw up a loop. And yarn over and draw through all 3 loops. So we're going to just keep repeating that. 1 single crochet stitch, 1 decrease. Alright, so that's the last decrease of round 14, and I'm ready for round 15, which is my last crochet round on the head. Take my stitch marker out. I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then 1 decrease. Then repeat that pattern 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions. Alright, so there's that last decrease. So I'm ready to go ahead and fasten off, and I'm going to do that by slip stitching. So I'm going to take my stitch marker out and slip stitch in the stitch it was just in. So to do a slip stitch, we're going to go into the next stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop, and then draw that loop through the only loop left on our crochet hook. Then we need to cut the yarn and leave a long tail for sewing. So I'm going to cut quite a bit of yarn here, maybe 24 inches or so, because we're going to be using this to shape the face. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull until that passes through, and then tighten that slip stitch down. So you can see there is the head crocheted. So next up, I'm going to go ahead and stuff. Now you can of course stuff as you work, but I prefer to stuff here at the end, especially since we have this big opening here. Alright, so there is the head stuffed. Next up, let's go ahead and get the nose attached. So I've just cut a length of that same nude colored yarn and I'm going to get it threaded through my tapestry needle. And then we're going to send our needle into the space between stitches. So we don't want to sew inside of the fabric of the stitch. We want to kind of grab just the space where all of our stitches line up. So into the head. And then we're going to sew a straight stitch or two here in between the eyes. So I'm going to come up close to my left eye and pull and then leave a tail of my nude yarn here on the outside of my work. We're coming back for it. Then I'll sew down next to the right eye, come up back over by the left eye, and I'll sew a second straight stitch here between. Alright, so now that I have those two straight stitches sewn in between the eyes, we're going to take this same needle and go underneath those two straight stitches and then keep wrapping around to form the nose. So I'm just wrapping this nude yarn around those two straight stitches, sewing from the bottom to the top every time. And go nice and slow so these wraps are all about the same tightness and the same length. Alright, so once you've wrapped all the way around going one way, we're going to go back the other direction. Adding more wraps, just kind of making the nose a little more pronounced. So go nice and slow, make sure your wraps are all about the same length. Alright, so once you've sewn all the way across on the other way, we can get this tied to this. We're going to take our needle and send it down into the work and then up through the same space between stitches that we have that tail hanging out of. Then unthread our needle and we can tie these two tails together into a square knot, just like you tie your shoe. And then, using our scissors, we're going to trim these two tails short and close to the work. Then we'll take the end of our needle, and we're going to grab some of the fabric here next to where that knot is, and then just pull that fabric up with our needle. And that takes the knot and sends it to the inside and hides it. Alright, so next we need to add some of the face shaping here. So we're going to be using the tail from fastening off. So I'm going to go ahead and thread that through the eye of my needle. And to make that face shaping, we're going to be sending some straight stitches underneath the eyes and pulling. So I'm going to send this straight into the fluff of the head here and come up so I'm close to the bottom of the right eye. Then I'm going to sew a straight stitch just out to the outside of the right eye and come across to the spot on the left eye. And that straight stitch we're going to pull. Give it a pretty tight pull too. And that sort of brings the eye to the inside of the head and pronounces the cheek a little bit. We're going to repeat on this side. And I'm going to send my yarn out through, just any old place, because we're going to fasten off. So then pull that one tight too. And I use my fingers to sort of poke and move and shape things a little bit better. Alright, so with that face shaping added, we can fasten this off by tying a surface knot or a French knot. So we're going to loop that nude yarn over the surface of our work, snag a little bit of the fabric of the work, so I'm going to just slip in through this stitch here. And then I also need to sew up through that loop, so I sort of just hooked my needle into that loop. And pull and pull and pull until that wraps around itself and ties a knot. Then to hide that knot and get this tail woven in, we're going to just send it inside of the head and out through any old place, pulling to send the knot to the inside. Then we can unthread our needle and trim this. You can see that adds the face shaping here of the eyes and really pronounces the cheeks. Next, we need to get the eyebrows and the eye details sewn on. Let's start with the eyebrows. Alright, so I have some black embroidery floss threaded through my needle here. And I'm going to embroider the eyebrows in approximately round 6, and they're about 4 stitches apart. So we know this round here is round 8 because we did in between rounds 8 and 9 for the eyes. So 8, 7, 6 right here. And the eyebrows are going to be kind of at a slant and basically directly over the tops of the eyes. So like with the nose, we're going to sew in between spaces of stitches. And I'm going to come up in the top of round 6 here. And leave a little tail on the outside of my work. And then sew this eyebrow just directly over the stitch and at an angle in round 6. And we're going to repeat on the other side with the other eyebrow. So I'll sew this one down over the fabric of round 6 and then back out through the space between stitches. You can see that adds the eyebrows. Can unthread. Just like with the nose, we're going to tie these 2 strands together. Then trim. And we'll pull those to the inside with our needle by lifting the work up. Alright, and there are the eyebrows. Next, let's go ahead and add the white detail to the outsides of the eyes. So I'm using a little white yarn. You can also use white embroidery floss for this. And we're going to take our needle again in between the space between stitches, and we're going to come up underneath the middle bottom of the right eye. So try to sew as close to it as you can get. Here we go. Leave a little tail on the outside, and we're going to run this around the outside of the right eye and repeat on the left eye. So I'm going to just pull pretty tight to kind of get it to stick where you want it. And we'll repeat on the opposite eye and sew across and out through where we went down. Alright, so you can see that adds that white detail to the outsides of the eyes. I'm going to go ahead and unthread and tie these 2 tails together. Trim. And then lift my fabric up to send the knots to the inside. Alright, so there are all the tails woven in and all the details sewn on onto the head. Let's go ahead and move on to the next part of our pattern. Alright, next up we need to make the ears. So we need to make 2 of these. I'll walk you through how to make 1. You'll need to make a second, and then we'll get them attached together. Working again with this nude colored yarn and forming another magic ring. Alright, now that we have our magic ring formed, we're ready for round 1. We're going to put 4 single crochet stitches inside of round 1. Alright, when you have all 4 of your single crochet stitches, you can pull the magic ring tail. And we're ready for round 2. Starting with 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round, and you're really going to have to swing your hook over and stretch to get to this first stitch. So there's that first single crochet stitch. Then 1 increase in the next stitch. And repeat that a second time, so 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase. That's round 2 done. Let's pull our magic ring tail tight one last time. And then give it a trim. Round 3, we're going to do what we did in round 2, but this time we're going to repeat it 3 times. So 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. then 1 increase, and repeat 2 more times. Alright, and then round 4, the last round of the ear, just 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, there's my last single crochet stitch. I'm ready to fasten off, and I'm going to do that by slip stitching. So I go through that next stitch that my stitch marker was in, and slip stitch. Then I'm going to cut the yarn and I'll leave a long tail to sew with. So 12-14 inches should do it for each ear. Then pull until that tail passes through and tighten it down. And then we also need to shape the ear, and we're going to do that by folding our ear flat so both layers of fabric come together. And then we'll thread the eye of our needle with the tail we've cut, and then fold this flattened ear in half so the two sides come together, and then sew a couple of stitches across just to secure this shape. You can see that gives it a nice rounded but still pointy at the end shape. Alright, so that is the first ear made. Let's make another and then we can get them attached to the head. Alright, so I have both of my ears made and I'm ready to get them attached. So we're going to take the tail that we've already used to sew the end of the ear together and use it to attach to the elf's head. So they're going to be attached to either side of the head and in row 9, which is that row on the bottom of the eye. And they're about 17 stitches apart, but I really like to think about it as they're just going on either side of the head, like a pair of ears on a human. Alright, so we're just going to grab some of the fabric of the head in round 9, and then some of the fabric of the ear at the very bottom here, sewing through both layers of fabric. And I like to add a couple of stitches to really reinforce that these are attached. Alright, so once you've got the ear attached, we're going to tie another surface knot here with that tail we've been using to sew. So make a little loop, grab some of the fabric of your work, and then sew up through that loop, pull until it wraps around itself and ties a knot, and then just weave the tail in. Alright, so that is one of the ears attached. We need to repeat with the other ear on the other side. Alright, so next up is the hat. We're going to begin with this light yellow colored yarn and by forming another magic ring. Alright, so now that we have our magic ring formed, the hat is formed in joined rounds. So we're going to be ending each round by slip stitching and chaining 1. Now if you've worked crochet before, a chain 1 usually kind of means to turn your work over and work down the other side of a chain. That's not the case. We just want to work in joined rounds because our hat has stripes. So that's how we'll close off each round. So let's go ahead and get started here. For round 1, we're going to put 6 single crochet stitches in our magic ring. I'll go ahead and mark that first stitch. Alright, so when you have all 6 single crochet stitches, you can pull the tail of your magic ring. And to close off the round, we're going to slip stitch to our first stitch of the round. And then chain 1 stitch. Alright, so we're ready for round 2. And round 2, we've got a parentheses pattern to repeat 2 single crochet stitches in the... So we're going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches. So a quick note, since we've slip stitched to our technical first stitch and chained 1, we're going to start this parentheses pattern in the actual second stitch of our round. So I'll make my first single crochet stitch, and then we're going to always mark that first stitch. So there's that. Then 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch of the round, and then 1 increase. And we're going to do that a second time. So 2 single crochet stitches, increase, Alright, so then we're ready to close off our round, and we're going to be slip stitching to the first stitch of the round. Every time we slip stitch, we'll be slip stitching to this. And then we're going to chain 1. Before we move on to round 3 though, let's pull our magic ringtail tight one last time, and then give it a trim. And round 3 is also our last round of this light yellow color, so we're going to be doing a color change here at the end of round 3. So round 3, we're going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the first 2 stitches of the round. And then a decrease. Again, remember working our decrease in the front loops only. And we're going to repeat that a second time. Alright, and we are ready to change colors. So we're done with our light yellow. Let's go ahead and cut a short tail with it here. So now that we have our light yellow cut, we're ready to do the end part of round 3. But when we pull through our slip stitch, we need to do it in our new color. So we're going to take our hook and go through the first stitch of the round. Lay that yellow to the back. And then with our new color here, this red, we need to make a little loop, leave a tail over on one side, and then put that loop on our hook and use our new color to pull through the fabric of the work and the loop left on our hook. Then we're going to take that tail and drop it to the back side with the yellow tail that we've cut. We'll work these in, but we can't work them in for round 4. We're actually going to work them in for round 5. So we're ready for the end of round 3 finally. We're chaining 1 here in our red now. And round 4, we're going to be working in the back loops and placing 1 slip stitch all the way around. So we've already worked in the front loops. You know, we take our hook and we slide it up from the front and grab just the front loop. For the back loops, we're going to kind of take our hook and from the top of the stitch, slide and grab just the back loop of the next stitch. Then we're going to make our slip stitch here. I'm going to mark that as well. And then we're going to continue slip stitching, 6 of these total. Alright, so there's that there. Then we're going to slip stitch in the first slip stitch of the round. And then yarn, and then chain 1. Alright, so we are ready for round 5. And round 5, we're going to be working in the back loops again. So in our next back loop, we're going to place 1 single crochet stitch. We're also going to work our tails in. So lay your 2 tails over your hook, and then make your first single crochet stitch and mark. Then in the next back loop, we're going to increase. Lay your tails over your hook as well. And then we worked those tails in for a few stitches now, so let's give them one final tug and then give them a snip. That'll keep them out of our way. And we're going to repeat that pattern of 1 single crochet stitch increase 2 more times, and that's in the back loops. So 1 single crochet stitch, increase, and last time. Right, so there's that last increase. I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch to the first stitch of the round. And then chain 1. Then I'm ready for round 6. I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches. We're not in the back loops anymore. there's those first 2 single crochet stitches. Then I'm going to increase. And then repeat that pattern 2 more times. Alright, so that wraps up round 6, and I've got another color change, but we're not cutting the red yarn. We're going to be coming back to it. So we're going to just take it and drop it to the back of our work. And we're going to be pulling through our slip stitch here in our new color, which is this white. So let's take our stitch marker out, and then go through that stitch it was just in. Make a little loop here out of the white yarn that we're switching to, and draw it through both of those loops on our hook. Then drop the white tail to the back as well, and chain 1. Alright, we are ready for round 7. So round 7, we're going to be putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 12 stitches of our round. We'll go through that first stitch, and then we need to work our white tail in for a few stitches here. So just like with the last color change, lay it over your hook. Here's that first single crochet stitch. I'm going to mark it. And we'll keep working over that tail. You can see I'm just holding it along the back side of my work. Alright, so I've got it worked in for 6 stitches here. I'm going to go ahead and give that a trim. And then continue working, adding 1 single crochet stitch around. Alright, so there's that 12th single crochet stitch. I'll go ahead and slip stitch the first stitch of the round, and then chain 1. And I'm ready for round 8. We're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches. And then 1 increase. Then repeat that pattern 2 more times. So 3 single crochet stitches, increase. Alright, so that's round 8 done, but I need to slip stitch to close off the round, and I need to do it in red because we're switching back to red. So I'm going to take my white and I'm going to drop it to the back of my work and grab my red and then slip stitch using my red and then tighten that white down. Then we can chain 1 in our new color, which is the red. And we're ready to start in on round 9. So 1 single crochet stitch in the next 15 stitches. Right, there are those 15 single crochet stitches. Slip stitching to the first stitch of the round. Then chaining 1. And round 10, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. And then increase. Repeat that 2 more times. Alright, that's round 10 done. I'm ready for round 11. But I need to finish off round 10 by slip stitching with white because we're switching back. So drop the red to the back, pull through your slip stitch here with white, and then chain 1. And for round 11, 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around, which should be 18 stitches. Right, there are those 18 single crochet stitches. I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch and chain 1. And we're ready for round 12. We're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then increase. Then repeat that pattern 5 more times. Alright, so there's that last increase here for round 12, and we are ready to fasten off our white. So let's go ahead and take our stitch marker out, put our crochet hook through, and then cut the white, and then pull through, slip stitching in red Tighten that white tail down and the red, and then chain 1. Alright, so we're ready for round 13, and we're going to weave the white tail in as we go. So round 13, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Should be 24 stitches. And then just hold that white tail to the back, working it in with each single crochet stitch that we make. Alright, so I've woven it in for 6 stitches. I'll go ahead and give it a trim. And then just continue single crocheting in red. Alright, so I have worked all the way around. I'm ready to slip stitch. Then chain 1. Then in round 14, I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of my round. And then increase. And I'll repeat that 5 more times. Alright, so I have worked all the way around, and we're switching to green, and we're going to be done with the red. So I'm going to go ahead and just trim the red here. And then we need to slip stitch in our new color, which is green. I'm going to go through the first stitch here of the round, make a little loop here out of my green, and pull through. And then hold the green tail and the red tails together at the back of my work. And then chain 1. And I'm ready for round 15, and we can't weave the tails in yet because we're going to be slip stitching here in round 15. 1 back loop only slip stitch all the way around though. Alright, so there's that last back loop only slip stitch. I'm ready to slip stitch in the first slip stitch that I made. And then chain 1. And then for round 16, we're going to be working in the back loops only again. And we're going to be making a parentheses pattern here. So 4 single crochet stitches in the back loops. And we need to work our tails in too, so lay those tails over your work, over your hook as you make your first 4 single crochet stitches. So here's my second back loop only single crochet stitch. Here's my third. And my fourth. And before we make our increase of that parentheses pattern, I'm going to trim these tails short. So I've woven them in for 4 stitches now, that should be enough. Then we've got 1 back loop only increase in this next stitch. And we're going to repeat that pattern another 5 times for a total of 6 repetitions. Alright, so there's that last increase there of round 16. I'm going to slip stitch to that first single crochet stitch I made. And chain 1. And I'm ready for round 17. Just 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around, so not in the back loops anymore. Alright, so there's that last single crochet stitch of round 17. I'm ready for round 18, which is my last round here. First I need to slip stitch and chain 1. And then 1 single crochet stitch in the next 12 stitches of the round. So there are those 12 single crochet stitches, then 11 front loop only single crochet stitches. Wait, there are those 11 front loop only single crochet stitches, and then 13 regular single crochet stitches. Alright, so there's that last single crochet stitch. I'm going to slip stitch, and I don't need to chain one because we're actually fastening off the hat here. So we need to cut a long tail to sew with. We're going to use that to attach the hat to the head. Then go ahead and pull until that tail passes through your last slip stitch, and then tighten it down. Alright, so that is the hat done. Let's move on to the next part of the pattern. Alright, so for the next section of our pattern, we're going to be making the hair, and we're going to be fastening on to those front loops left behind on the hat. So to find them, let's just flip the brim of our hat up, and you can see the front loops here on the inside of that green brim. We're going to flip our hat over and insert our hook into that first front loop here. And then we need to fasten on with some brown yarn. So to fasten on, just like with the color change, we'll make a little tiny loop here with a tail, and then pull that through. And then we need to tie a knot, so we'll take the tail that we've formed and yarn over with it, and draw it through the loop that we pulled up. Then reinsert into that loop, begin tensioning our working yarn here, and draw it through that front loop. Alright, so now that we've done that, we are ready to start making the hair, and we're going to do that by chaining 6 stitches. So to chain, we're going to yarn over and draw through the loop on our hook. So there's 1, 2, 3. You can see I'm just yarning over each time and drawing through. 4, 5, 6. And then in the third chain from our hook, we're going to make a half double crochet stitch. So if we turn our work so that we're looking sort of at the chain from the side, we're going to work in the first, second, third one here from our hook. Then to make a half double crochet stitch, we need to wrap our yarn around our hook, or yarn over, then go through that chain, yarn under and draw up through the chain, and then yarn over and draw through all 3 loops on our hook. So there's that first half double crochet stitch. We're going to continue half double crocheting down this chain. So wrap, go in through our next chain stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop, yarn over and draw through all 3, wrap, go through the next chain stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop, and yarn over and draw through all 3. So one last one here. There are all 4 of those half double crochet stitches. And then we're going to slip stitch in the next 2 front loops here on the hat. So go through your next front loop, yarn under and draw up a loop, go through the next front loop, yarn under and draw up a loop. Then we're going to repeat that process of chaining 6 stitches, and then in that third chain, making our first of 4 half double crochet stitches. We're going to repeat that until we are all the way across and we are ready to fasten off. Alright, so I have just slip stitched in the last 2 front loops, and you can see I have all 5 strands of hair done here. So to fasten off, we just need to cut a short tail and then pull until that tail passes through that last slip stitch and tighten down. Then we need to weave these ends in, both where we fastened on and where we fastened off. So let's start by weaving in the fastened on tail here. I'm going to weave it in by sewing it kind of down and into some of the fabric of the green brim here. You can see I'm just passing it inside of those stitches. pulling pretty tight, and then I'm just going to trim it short. And I'll repeat here on this other brim, or on this other tail. I'll just pass it again just inside of some of the stitches of the brim here, and then just trim it short. Alright, so now that we have the hair attached, we can roll the brim back down, and then we're ready to get the hat attached to our elf's head. So let's thread this green tail left behind on the hat through our tapestry needle here. And then we're going to set the hat down right on top of the elf's head here. You can see those strands of hair are going to kind of flip up and look very windswept and very cute. So you can set it directly on top of the magic ring. I'm going to tilt mine back a little bit here so that you can see some of the forehead. But once you've got your hat positioned so that the bangs are facing forward here, we're going to go ahead and sew around attaching the hat to the head. So I'm going to attach the hat with some back stitch. So I'm going to go through and sew up in between the second to last round and last round here on the green part of the hat. And then I'm going to just sew through some of the fabric of the head underneath where I'm at, and then come up through some of the fabric of the hat. I'm just going to work my way around. Alright, so once you're all the way around and you've got the hat attached to the head, we're going to go ahead and secure all of those stitches we've sewn with another surface knot. And then just weave this into the inside of the hat and the head, and then now just through any old place here. And snip. And that gets the hat and the hair attached to our elf's head. So we're ready to move on to the next part of our pattern. Alright, so next up we're going to make the legs, and we need to make two, so I'll walk you through how to make the first, and then you'll need to make the second, and then we're going to come back together and get the legs started in on the body. So starting with this light yellow colored yarn and forming another magic ring. Also, the legs are made in joined rounds just like the hat was made, so we're going to slip stitch and then chain one to end each round, and we're not going to be turning our work. Alright, so magic rings formed. I'm ready for round one. I'm going to put 6 single crochet stitches inside of this magic ring. Right there, those 6 stitches. I'm going to pull the tail, take my stitch marker out and slip stitch to that first stitch of the round, then chain 1, and I'm ready for round 2. I'm going to increase in each stitch all the way around. Alright, there's that last increase, slip stitch to the first stitch of the round, and chain 1. Then before I make round 3 here, I'm going to pull that magic ring tail tight one last time and give it a trim. Alright, so I'm ready for round 3. We're going to be working in the back loops. 1 single crochet stitch in each back loop all the way around. Alright, so there's that last single crochet stitch in the back loop. Slip stitch in the first stitch of the round and chain 1. And I'm ready for round 4, just 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, there's that last single crochet stitch, slip stitch to the first stitch of the round, chain 1. And I'm ready for round 5, starting with 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. Then in the next 4 stitches we need to decrease, or for the next 4 stitches. So here's my first decrease. We're going to make all 4 of these back to back. Second decrease, third, and fourth. And then 1 single crochet stitch in the 2 remaining stitches of the round. Alright, that wraps up our light yellow here, so let's go ahead and cut. And we're going to be switching to red, so let's go ahead and put our hook through the first stitch of our round, drop the yellow to the back, grab our new color, which is red, and make our little loop, and then pull that through our slip stitch. Then take the red tail and the yellow tail, drop them to the back together, and chain 1 in our new color. And we're ready for round 6, and we're going to make 8 back loop only slip stitches around. Alright, so there's that last back loop only slip stitch. I'm going to slip stitch to the first slip stitch that I made, and chain 1. I'm going to tighten both of those tails because I'm going to be able to work them in here for round 7. So round 7 we're going to be making 8 back loop only single crochet stitches. So we're going to go through our first back loop here, lay our tails over our hook, and single crochet. We're just going to keep adding back loop only single crochet stitches. Alright, so I've woven my tails in for 4 stitches. I'm going to go ahead and give them a trim. And I'm going to take this time to add just a little bit of stuffing to the inside of the foot here. Alright, so now that I've got those tails tucked in and I've got a little stuffing, I'm going to continue back loop only single crocheting around. Alright, so there's that last back loop only single crochet stitch, and I need to switch colors here to white. So let's go ahead, take our stitch marker out, drop our red to the back because we're coming back for it. We don't need to cut. Get our white ready to go. Go through that first stitch of the round, make that little loop out of our new color, and slip stitch using white. Drop the white's tail to the back, and chain 1. Alright, so we're ready for round 8. We're going to make 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round and work our white tail in as we go too. So here's our first single crochet stitch. And then 1 increase in the next stitch. Still working that white tail in. We're going to repeat that 3 more times. So 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase. Alright, that's round 8 done. So we are done. We only needed 1 stripe there of white. Let's go ahead and trim. Alright, so we're ready to switch back over to the red. Take our stitch marker out, and we're going to slip stitch with that red color that's still attached, and chain 1. And we need to work in the white that we just finished working with here. For round 9, just 1 single crochet stitch in red, and I'm working that tail in too as I go. Alright, so there are all 12 of those red single crochet stitches, and we're ready to fasten off. So we'll slip stitch to the first stitch of the round, and we need to cut a short tail. We don't need very much, we have to weave this one in. So we're going to pull and tighten. And then let's go ahead and get this woven in. We're going to go ahead and thread it through the eye of our tapestry needle. And we're just going to weave it straight down and into the fabric of the leg. So I'm just weaving out through the bottom of the foot here, and then trim. And then let's add just a little bit of stuffing to the top part of the foot here, the leg. Alright, and that is one of the legs done. Let's make a second, and then we can get them crocheted together and start in on the body. Alright, so I have both of the legs crocheted, and our instructions for attaching them tell us that the right leg we're going to be fastening on in the 5th stitch of our round. So if you find where your slip stitch is, there's our 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And for me, that is accurate. I do need to fasten on here in that 5th stitch, but if you're using a larger or smaller weight yarn than what I'm using, there's a chance that this might not be your 5th stitch. So we want to make sure we're inserting our hook so that it's centered over those 4 decreases that we made. You can see my hook falls right centered in between the 2nd and the 3rd decrease. So if you need to move this insert over one or a few stitches over, that's totally fine. But let's go ahead and get our hook positioned so that it's centered in between where those decreases are. And then fasten on with our white color here. Let's make a little loop, pull it through, and then pull that tail through and tighten down. Then we need to go back through that same loop and chain 2 stitches. So you can see I've got 2 stitches chained here. I'm going to mark the first of those 2 chains. Then we're ready to go ahead and insert into our other foot. And our other foot, it's saying it's recommending we insert into the 9th stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm actually going to insert a little over. So I want it to be centered here in between these, again, those decreases. So I'm just going to push my hook through, and then I'm going to make my first single crochet stitch of this round, which is round 10, right here in this stitch. So the goal is we want those 2 feet to sort of point inwards or towards one another. Alright, so there's that first single crochet stitch. I'm going to continue working around, adding 1 single crochet stitch to all 12 of these stitches left over from the last round on the left foot. Alright, so there are all 12 of those stitches, and you can see I'm back over to where the chain and that first single crochet stitch are. Then I need to put 1 single crochet stitch along the back side of this chain. So my first chain stitch here is marked, and I'm going to be really careful not to twist this chain. So I'm going to go through the second chain that I made, the one that's not marked, and make 1 single crochet stitch. And then I go through the first chain, the one that is marked, this one here, and make a single crochet stitch. Then I need to put another 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 12 stitches on this foot here. So there's my first, 2, 3. Alright, there are those 12 single crochet stitches on the other foot. And then you can see I've got that chain 2 that connects the 2 with that stitch, that first chain marked. So I'm going to go ahead and single crochet across that chain. So here's my first stitch. And I'm going to actually work that fasten on chain tail in with the second stitch here. Alright, so that gets the legs attached, and then we are ready to start in on round 11, but we need to switch to our new color, which is this red color. So I'm going to go through this next stitch here, the first one here on the leg, yarn under in white, then trim a tail, and then we're going to pull through that those two loops left on our hook here with our red color. Drop that tail to the back. And we can hold the red and white tails together as we start in here on round 11. So we need to put one single crochet stitch in the next 6 stitches of our round. So I'm going to work my tails in as well, the red and the white. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then 1 increase. And then 1 single crochet stitch in the next 12 stitches. Then 1 increase, and then 1 single crochet stitch in the 8 remaining stitches of our round. Okay, so that's round 11 done. I'm ready to start in on round 12. We're gonna just put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, so this is my last single crochet stitch here of round 12. I need to pull through this stitch in green because I'm switching colors to green for the belt section of the body. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull through the last 2 loops of my single crochet stitch here in green, drop the red to the back of my work and the tail for the green to the back of my work. And we're ready for round 13, which is some back loop only slip stitches all the way around. So we're going to go to the back loop and just slip stitch in each back loop all the way around for round 13. Alright, that's round 13 done for me. Then round 14, back loop only single crochet stitches all the way around. And we want to work this green tail in for the first few of those stitches as well. So we're going to go through, grab the back loop, lay that green tail over, make a single crochet stitch. And then just keep back loop only single crochet stitching, working that tail in for a few more stitches here. Alright, so I'm just about to make my last single crochet stitch here. You can see I've already put my hook through my next stitch and drew up a loop. I actually need to finish this in red though, because we're switching back to red. So cut a short tail, and the red we left attached to the back. Go ahead and just yarn over and draw through with that there. Tighten that green down. And we're ready to go ahead and work round 15. So we've got another back loop only slip stitch round to work here. So just in the back loops, adding 1 slip stitch to each. Alright, so that was round 15 done. I'm ready for round 16. We've got some back loop only single crochet stitches to make here. And then let's weave our green tail in for the first few stitches as well. So just lay it right over the hook as you make your single crochet stitch. Alright, that wraps up round 16 for me. I'm ready for round 17. Just one single crochet stitch in each single crochet stitch from the previous round. So 30 single crochet stitches all the way around. Alright, that's round 17 done. I'm ready for round 18, starting with one single crochet stitch in the next 8 stitches of the round. Right there, those 8 single crochet stitches, then 1 decrease. And then I'm going to repeat that pattern 2 more times, so 8 single crochet stitches, decrease. Alright, that's round 18 done. So for rounds 19 and 20, just one single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Don't forget to move your stitch marker up as you start each row or round, and I will see you back here when I am done with round 20, and we're ready to move on. Alright, so I just wrapped up round 20, and I'm ready to start in on round 21. We're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 7 stitches of the round. And then 1 decrease. Then repeat that 2 more times. Alright, that's round 21 done. Round 22, we're just going to put one single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, that's round 22 done, and I'm ready for round 23. I'm going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 6 stitches of my round. And then 1 decrease, and repeat that another 2 times. Alright, so I'm about to make that last decrease, but before I do, I'm going to add some more stuffing to the inside of my body. So let's pull this last single crochet stitch up long, and add some stuffing to the inside. Alright, so there's some stuffing added, and I'm ready to make this last decrease. And the reason I paused here is because we have a color change. So I'm going to go ahead and start that decrease. Go through the next front loop, yarn under and drop a loop. Go through the next front loop, drop a loop. And then we're switching back to that nude color, so we're going to cut the red, make a little loop out of our nude color, and then pull it through those 3 loops left on our hook. And then tighten down and hold those 2 tails together. Alright, so for round 24, we're making some back loop only slip stitches here. Alright, that's round 24 done, and we're ready for round 25. Last round here on the body. So we need to work in the nude and the red tail as we work this last round here. And we're going to be working in the back loops and by making one single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches. So take those tails with you as you work your first 5 stitches here. Alright, there are those first 5 single crochet stitches in the back loop. I'm going to just push the tails to the inside at this point, work them in for 5 stitches, and then 1 back loop only decrease. And we're going to repeat that another 2 times. So 5 single crochet stitches. Alright, so there's that last decrease. I'm ready to fasten off. I'm going to slip stitch to the next stitch, so take that stitch marker out and slip stitch. And then I need to leave a long tail because we're going to use it to attach the head and the body together. So I'm going to leave probably 24 inches. I don't like running out of tail, so I'd rather have too much than not enough. Then pull until our tail passes through that last slip stitch and tighten it down. And we're also going to add a little more stuffing to the top of the body here. Alright, and that is the body crocheted and stuffed. So when we attach the head first, there is a bit of a jog on the back side of the body. You can see it really clearly here in the belt. It kind of shifts up one round. This is the back side of our body. So let's make sure we're looking at the front side. And once we are, we can get this tail threaded through the eye of our needle. And then the last round of the body and the last round of the head have the same number of stitches on them. So we're going to sew through one stitch of the body and one stitch of the head and just work our way around attaching the two together. So first, let's make sure our head is centered here. We want the nose to be centered on the center of the body, the eyes. And then we'll flip our head over, our body over as well. And since we have our tail in the fabric of our body, we're going to just sew right up to the closest stitch here on the head. And then whip stitch through one stitch on the body, one stitch on the head, pulling each stitch pretty tightly as we sew our way around. Alright, so I have sewn all the way around. I'm ready to secure this by tying another surface knot here. And send that tail to the inside of the head. Unthread my needle and trim to have woven it in. Alright, so there is the head and the body attached. Let's also go ahead and embroider on the belt buckle here as well. So I've got a little length of that same light yellow color that I used on the feet. And the belt buckle is going to go centered on the belt, and we're going to be sewing kind of a C shape here. So I'm going to come up in between the space between stitches. Leave a long tail on the outside. And then I'm going to sew along the 3 stitches here and come up centered on the opposite side of the belt. Sew a straight stitch down that way, and then come up even with the end of this first straight stitch that I sewed. And sew one more stitch this way. And then come up and out through where I went in. You can see that adds the belt buckle. So I'll unthread, tie these 2 tails together, give them a trim, and then just like with all the face details, grab some of the fabric around where those knots are and pull, just send it to the inside. Alright, so that is the head and the body attached and the belt buckle sewn. Let's move on to the next part of the pattern. Alright, so next up we need to make the arms, and we need to make 2 of them, so I'll walk you through how to make one. You'll need to make a second, and then we can get them attached. Starting with this nude colored yarn and by forming another magic ring. Alright, so now that we have our magic ring formed, ready for round 1, and we need to put 7 single crochet stitches inside of our ring. Alright, when you have all 7 single crochet stitches in your magic ring, you can pull the tail to close off round 1, and then we're ready for round 2, just 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. But we have a color change at the end of this round. So here's my first single crochet stitch. Alright, so there's my 6th out of 7 single crochet stitches for round 2. I'm going to first pull the magic ring tail really tightly one last time, and then give it a trim. You don't need any extra tails while we're doing our color change. And then we're switching to green. We're going to be fastening off this nude color. So let's start our last single crochet stitch here. We're going to go through, yarn under, and draw up a loop. And then we can cut the nude colored yarn. So leave a short tail, maybe 4 inches. And we're going to be switching to this green color. So I'm going to go ahead, just like I've done with all my color changes so far, I'm going to fold a little loop with a tail here, and then put that loop on my hook and pull through those 2 nude loops with this green. Then I'm going to take the green tail and lay it to the back with the nude tail, and then begin tensioning my green yarn. And there's my color change done. So we're going to work those tails in, but we need to wait till round 4 to work them in. Starting in on round 3, we're going to be working in the back loops and doing 1 back loop only slip stitch all the way around. So we're going to go through our next back loop and make a nice loose slip stitch. We want these to be loose because we're going to be working in them next round. And if we work too tightly, they're really hard to work in. Alright, so I've gone all the way around and I'm ready for round 4. We're making 7 back loop only single crochet stitches this time around. And we need to work our tails in. So we'll go through the first back loop here, lay those 2 tails over our crochet hook, and then make our single crochet stitch as normal. I'm also going to go ahead and mark. And we're going to continue working around, adding those tails over our hook. And let's work them in quite a bit so they really stay out of our way. Alright, so here's my 5th stitch. I'm going to go ahead and give those tails a little bit of a tug and then twist them together and push them to the inside of my work. So they're woven in, and this is going to keep them out of our way as we continue working around. Alright, so I've got 2 more stitches, and in the last one we're going to make another color change. So here's my 6th single crochet stitch. I'm going to start my 7th single crochet stitch, just like I did when I switched to the green that we're using right now. Then we're going to be switching to red, so we can cut a short tail with the green, get our red and make a loop, and then pull through with that loop, and then set the red tail to the back with the green tail. That's our color change, and then we are ready to make round 5, making some back loop only slip stitches again. So remember to work nice and loosely when you work these slip stitches. Alright, so there's that last back loop only slip stitch, and I'm ready for round 6. We're going to make back loop only single crochet stitches, and we need to work our tails in as well. So lay those tails over as you work. I'm also going to mark the first stitch in my round here. Alright, so I've worked those tails in for 5 stitches. I'm going to do the same thing I did with the last 2. I'm going to twist them together and then stuff them to the inside of the arm just to keep them out of my way. And if you need to, you can use the back end of your hook to tuck those tails in. Just push. Alright, so there's my last single crochet stitch of round 6. So for round 7 through 12, we're just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. So don't forget to remark the beginning of each new round. I will see you back here at the end of round 12 when we're ready to fasten off and then get the cuff detail added on to the arms. Alright, so I just finished the last single crochet stitch of round 12 and I'm ready to fasten off. So I'll take my stitch marker out and we're going to slip stitch in the stitch it was just in. And then we need a long tail. We're going to use that to sew the arm onto the body. 6 to 12 inches. You know me, I like to have a little extra. And then pull until that tail passes through and tighten down. And then there is a small cuff detail that is attached here on the green band. So we're going to get some green yarn. And we're going to fasten on so that we fasten to the lower green front loop left behind from where the hand and the cuff meet up. So if you look, you can kind of find that jog place on our arm. We're going to go through where that loop is the lowest. So just push your hook straight up from the top of the arm towards the hand here. And then just like we've done when we fastened on before, make a little loop and then pull that little loop through. And then we're going to take the tail and pull that through the loop that we've just made. And then tighten it down into a knot. Then we'll go back through and yarn over and draw up a loop. And do that a second time. And then we're going to make one slip stitch in each of the green front loops left behind here on the wrist. So just slip stitching around, adding a little detailing here to the cuff. Alright, I'm all the way back around. I made my last slip stitch in the first loop that I fastened onto. I'm going to cut a tail and then pull till that passes through the loop on my hook. There we go. Tighten it down. And then we need to weave these two tails in, the one from fastening on and the one from fastening off. So I'll start with the fasten on tail, thread it through the eye of my needle. We're going to just sew it into the inside of the arm and then just in through the open space inside the arm, and then just out through any old stitch towards the top of the arm. And we're going to do the same thing on the tail we just used to fasten off. Send it into the fabric of the arm and through the hollow inside and then out through any old place. And then we can trim. You can see that adds that cuff detail to the bottom of the green band here. And that wraps up the arm. So let's get one more crocheted and then we can get them attached to our body. Alright, so I have both of my arms crocheted and I'm ready to get them attached, starting with one. And I'm going to go ahead and thread the tail through my needle here. And when we sew the arms on, we want to make sure that this jog is sort of facing inside. So locate where that jog is on the arm. And that's the side that's going to get squished to the body itself. So we're ready to attach the arms, and they're going to attach on so they meet up with the front loops left behind from that color change on the neck. And you can see that makes it so that the wristband lines up where the belt is on our elf. And then when we sew the arms on, we're going to be sewing through both layers of fabric here. So as we whip stitch them on, we're going to come back up through both layers of the arms fabric. So I'm going to grab some of the fabric of the red part of the body here and sew up through the top of the arm. And then just work my way across, sewing the top of the arm closed as I attach it to the body. Alright, so once you've sewn all the way across and the arm is fully attached, we can secure all of those stitches by tying another surface knot. And then weave this tail in through the body and out through. Someplace that's red, I find it's easier to hide the tail if it's in the same color fabric. Alright, so that is one of the arms attached. We need to repeat with the other arm on the other side. Alright, so our last section that we need to make is the collar, and we're going to begin by forming a slip knot and chaining stitches. So let's do a quick review on how to get a slip knot tied, and then how to chain our first few stitches. Alright, so let's review how to tie a slip knot and how to form a chain stitch. So we're going to take our yarn, and I'm using white for this demonstration, so just double check you're using the correct color from your pattern. And we're going to reserve ourselves a little bit of a tail, just like we do with our magic ring. So I'm going to take maybe 5 or 6 inches or so of my working yarn here, make myself a little tail. And then we're going to take that tail and we're going to wrap it behind our working yarn. So we're sort of making like a lowercase letter B. So once we've got that wrapped around, we formed this loop here. We're going to kind of sandwich the working yarn with the tail. So bring it back around and kind of cross it over that loop. Sort of like a pretzel twist. Then when we've done that, what we need to do is draw this twist that we've just done, that strand, through this loop without pulling the tail all the way through, because that would just tie a knot. So I take my hook hand, which is my right hand, and I grab what I've laid over that loop and pull it. And then with my other hand, I grab my working yarn and then pull the loop through. And the reason I form my slip knots this way is because they tighten when you pull on the tail, but not when you pull on the working yarn. It won't tighten while you're trying to add stitches to it. So once you've got that slip knot formed, you're going to take your hook and slip it inside of the slip knot, and then pull the tail to tighten it into a loop down onto your hook. Then you're ready to begin tensioning by laying the working yarn over your yarn index finger. So for me, that's my left index finger. And then wrapping the rest of your fingers around our working yarn. And then I like to hold on to the slip knot itself with my middle and thumb on my yarn hand. And then we're ready to form a chain. So to chain, we'll take our hook and we're going to yarn over, meaning we're going to put the yarn over our hook, and then draw the working yarn through the slip knot we tied, and then pull up to form a nice tall loop. So that's our first chain. To continue chaining, we're going to just keep yarning over and drawing a nice tall loop through each time. One final thing though, the loop on your hook, as I'm sure I may have mentioned in the video before, that doesn't count as a stitch. This is sort of like a stitch in progress. So right now I have 2 chain stitches formed. I'll yarn over and draw another stitch through. That'll be 3, 4. And as you add chain stitches, I tend to move my middle and my thumb up closer to my hook to help me sort of tension my yarn a little easier. So as I chain, I just keep shifting my hand down the stitches that I've just created. Alright, so that's how you tie a slip knot and chain. Alright, so now that we have our slip knot formed, we're ready to go ahead and start in on the collar. We're going to chain 25 stitches. Remember, we're yarning over and drawing through 2, 3, Alright, when you have all 25 of your stitches chained, we're going to start by inserting our hook in the 3rd chain from our hook, but we need to load up a yarn over because we're going to be making 3 double crochet stitches inside. So we're going to kind of go in clockwise, wrap our yarn around our hook, and then hold that wrap on our hook as we insert into the 1, 2, 3rd chain from our hook. And in this, we're going to put 3 double crochet stitches. So we're going to yarn under and draw up a loop, then yarn over and draw through 2, and then yarn over and draw through the 2 remaining. So there's our first double crochet stitch. We'll wrap around again, go into that same space, yarn under and draw up a loop, yarn over and draw through 2, yarn over and draw through 2. There's our second double crochet stitch, wrap around, draw through the stitch, draw through 2, draw through 2, Then we're going to skip the next chain stitch and slip stitch in that second chain stitch. So just yarn under and draw up. And then we're going to repeat that by skipping the next stitch and then starting our pattern over again. So wrapping around, skipping one stitch, going to the second stitch, adding 3 double crochet stitches to that stitch. So there's 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to skip a stitch and then slip stitch in the next stitch. And then skip another stitch and then start that 3 double crochet stitch cluster. So we're going to keep repeating this. We should have 6 of these total. Alright, so there's this last 3 double crochet cluster. I'm going to skip a stitch and then slip stitch here in my slip knot, which finishes the crochet part of the collar. So we're ready to fasten off. And we need a long tail to sew with because we're going to use this to sew the collar closed and to sew the collar on. And then I'm going to take both the slip knot tail and the tail I just cut and draw them both through this last loop and pull until they both pass through and then tighten them both. Alright, so there's the collar. We're ready to go ahead and get it attached to our elf. So it's just going to go right around his neck. And then here in the back, we need to sew the 2 ends so that they're attached together. And I'm going to use my slip knot tail to do that since it's the shorter of the 2. So to sew these 2 ends together, I'm just going to take this slip knot tail and go across the way onto the opposite side of the collar. And then come back to this side of the collar. So to the opposite side of the collar one last time. So that gets those 2 sides of the collar attached together. So I'm ready to weave this tail in. So I'm going to tie a surface knot here on the surface of the collar. And then weave the collar in to the inside of the head. And I'm going to weave it out through the collar here at the front. Alright, so that gets the 2 sides of the collar attached. Next, we're going to sew the collar to the neck of our elf with this longer green tail. So I'm going to grab some of the fabric of the neck and then sew up through each one of these chains of that first chain that we made. So I'm just going to sew up through one chain, down through the next, and work my way around. It's okay if you skip a few chains. You don't have to sew up through every single one. But we want to make sure that this collar is pretty well attached to our elf's neck and it can't spin around. Alright, so I've sewn all the way around the collar and it is pretty well attached to my elf, so I'm going to go ahead and tie another surface knot here in the fabric of the collar. And then weave this in by sewing it down and into the body and then out through just any old place. Then I can unthread and trim. Alright, last, and this is optional, you can add some rosy cheeks and a bit of a rosy nose to your elf. So you can use colored pencils or acrylic paint to do this, but I like to use a little of the blush that I might even use on my own face. So I'm going to take a little dab of it and add it to the cheeks here to make them nice and rosy. And then sort of just rub. And then I'm also add a little here to the nose. Alright, and with the blush added, our elf is complete.